All right. So with that said, we will start with managing recruiter with a specialization in equity, diversity, and inclusion for Latham and Watkins, Nicole Yorens. And Nicole, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having us. As Betsy said, my name is Nicole Yorens, and I'm the recruiting manager, diversity, inclusion, and belonging at Latham. And I have brought with me today Melange Gavin. Melange is an associate in our New York office, and she was previously a 1L and a 2L diversity scholar at the firm, and she'll talk to you a little bit more about what that was and what that means. I have also brought with me Monica Treba, and Monica, I'm going to butcher this, Nelligan. Yeah. Monica is an associate in our DC office. She also happens to be a Vanderbilt undergrad alum, and she is the local office leader of the Hispanic Latin American Lawyers Group. And she also will talk a little bit more about what that means. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Monica to start and give us a little bit more background of who she is and talk to us a little bit more about her time at Latham.
Sure. Well, nice to be talking with you all today. As Nicole said, I'm a Vandy undergrad alum. I also went to grad school at Vandy, so I'm happy to talk to you guys, to this group. So I am originally from Miami, Florida, and I'm Cuban American, and then went to Vandy for undergrad and grad school, and then I went to UVA for law school. I'm a fourth year in the DC office at Latham. I summered in the DC office back in 2016, I think it was. And I've been with the firm since I've graduated law school. So I've been there for quite a while. I'm in the litigation department, and I'm also in the white collar practice group. So I do white collar and government defense work.
Thank you so much, Monica. Melange?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all today. I hope the semester is going well so far. My name is Melange Gavin, and I am a first year, rising second year associate in the New York office. We are unassigned for our first 18 months as associates at Latham. So I am currently not in a specific practice group, but I'm leaning towards litigation and trial as well. I did my undergrad at University of Notre Dame and then went to Columbia for law school. So unfortunately no Vandy ties, but I've only heard good things. I'm Chinese American. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and yeah, happy to be with you all today.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. So I'd like you both to think back to your 1L and 2L years as you were going through the recruitment process and thinking about applying to law firms. What were you thinking about what were you looking for in a law firm, and was a firm's DEI efforts part of your equation as you were considering different firms? And I'll start with Monica.
Sure. So I think broadly, I really did not know I wanted to go to a law firm and work at a law firm. I didn't think I was interested in that. I had always done government work and policy work. So I assumed I would kind of stay in that world and stay in the public sector. So I wanted to go to a firm that had, an unassigned program first and foremost. So I wasn't sure what I would be interested in the private sector. So I wanted to go somewhere where I could try a bunch of different practice groups and I wasn't pigeonholed. I wanted to go somewhere that was large enough to, give me those opportunities, but didn't feel like a enormous place where I wasn't really connected to folks. The DEI or the DIE efforts were important for me. I mean, coming from Miami, I'm just very used. I just am very used to diversity. It was like something that I never felt like I had to actually actively seek out. It's just natural in Miami, and something that Vanderbilt was fairly diverse. I think they've gotten a lot more diverse since in the years that I've been there. But it was something I was looking for sure in my workplace culture. So when I went on callbacks and interviews, it definitely mattered the folks I spoke to, and I wanted to make sure I got a chance to speak with people from different backgrounds and just folks diverse in a lot of different ways. And I felt like I got that opportunity for sure when I was interviewing at Latham.
Great, Melange.
Yeah, so I think diversity and inclusion was definitely a priority for me, but more so once I got to law school. I would say my undergrad experience, I didn't really experience a lot of diversity in college, but also it didn't quite bother me as much until I got to law school. And going to Columbia, which is an incredibly diverse law school, I was very fortunate to then, experience just what it would be like to go to a school with my peers who are from all over the country, all over the world, and from a variety of backgrounds. So once I started, experiencing what that could be like, I think it definitely became a priority for me as I started to interview with firms. As Nicole mentioned, I did my 1L summer and my 2L summer with Latham. So I clearly came back to Latham for a reason, and the diversity aspect was one of them for sure. I did my 1L summer in the San Diego office, and that office is much smaller for reference than DC or New York, for example. My class there were only 8 of us total. I was the only 1L, but out of that class, over half were diverse or people of color, women. It was just already a variety of backgrounds in, frankly, a city, San Diego, that's not incredibly diverse on the face. So that was really encouraging for me and a great first summer with Latham. And then when I came back and decided to go to the New York office, I still felt that, the Latham New York office even did a better job of reaching all those different areas of students and of law students who come from a variety of backgrounds. So it was really encouraging for me to see that wasn't just the case in one of the smaller offices. It was the case in the larger offices as well. And I've seen that reflect out on, the work that Latham does, the kind of clients we have, and it reflects in the quality of the work we do too. So definitely was a priority for me in choosing Latham.
Thank you. So both of you talked about the fact that it was a priority for you. What would be some tips that you would give to students as they're interviewing? What are there questions they should be asking? Are there people they should be talking to? How do you make sure that you're getting the experience that you want when you pick a firm?
Generally, or as it relates to diversity?
I think as it relates to diversity, yeah.
I mean, I think in the interview process, in the callback process, most firms will really roll out the red carpet. Like if they want to bring you on, they will you can talk to whoever you want. My first callback, I think I spoke to 5 people, which is generally a pretty normal around different firms. And I spoke to only 1 woman in my first callback. I spoke to a lot of diverse people, but I only spoke to 1 woman. And now that I'm a 4th year and I do a lot of interviews, I realize it's because it's scheduling. I'm sure there were several women on my schedule, and then people have client things that pop up last minute. So I told them, I was I want to talk to, I want to come back for what they call the second look. And I was and I want to talk to all women. I wanted to talk to women at the firm, people who've done different things, women who've gone on maternity leave, women who've gone to the government and come back. I just would like to meet a bunch of them. And that was a really great opportunity. And I met just wonderful people. I met a few people who I met them. I was I want to be you. And I work with a lot of them today. And that was really beneficial. So I think communicating what your priorities are and what your interests are. I mean, at least I feel every time I've communicated that as far as who I want to work with or what kind of work I want to do or what I'd like to see more of at the firm, it's really it's really well heard, and people make an effort to try to get you those opportunities and make it so that your experience is what you want it to be. I think also getting involved really early on. Latham has a lot of committees. It's a very committee heavy firm. There's a committee for every single thing. Happy hours, at least in DC, there's just committees for everything, and it's associates and partners together. And it's a great opportunity to get involved and to kind of understand more of the workings of the firm and any kind of changes you want to see happen, really kind of see them through and be involved. So I'd recommend kind of when you're looking at firms, understanding how involved associates are in those processes, if they have similar kind of committees, and really just communicating your interests and what you want to do and who you want to work with, and seeing how receptive people are to that.
Yeah, I totally echo everything Monica said. I think as an interviewee, you do have a lot of power. So definitely emphasize that point. If you get a callback interview, you should request people you want to talk to. I think seeing a female partner on both my screener interviews and then callback interviews was really beneficial for me because, you just want to see someone who's similarly situated as you 10 years down the road in their career, 15 years down the road in their career, because that gives you something to, not just aspire to, but also you can realistically see what your life could be like if you stayed at Latham long-term or whatever firm you end up interviewing with. This is more of an anecdote, but, I think if you have the in-person interviews, hopefully you guys are interviewing in person this this year, it's really key to kind of keep an eye out on your surroundings. Like when you go to the office, just take in what you see, just the way people interact with people, from staff to paralegals to other associates or partners. That's really key. But also, I had a friend who, out of every law firm in New York that she interviewed with, Latham was the only one that provided free feminine products for their women in their bathrooms. And that was in, 2019. Or 2018. So that is something that it really struck with her when she told me that story. It really resonated with me as well, because that's something you don't think of, or that's something the firm won't advertise on its face. But when you go there, that does impact, your day-to-day experience. And I think little things like that and little details like that show how a firm does care about its employees overall.
Yeah, I completely agree, and would just echo everything that they both said. But I want to switch gears just a little bit. And Melange, will you talk to us a little bit about your 1L diversity scholar experience, and particularly the client piece of that experience?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I summered as a 1L in the San Diego office, and Latham's 1L program is structured so that you spend the first half of your summer at the firm like a typical summer associate. I did the exact same projects and attended the exact same events as my 2L associate coworkers. And then for the second half of the summer, you do get placed with a client and you go work in their in-house counsel or legal department, whatever the structure may be. My client was a telecommunications and company called Viasat, and they were headquartered in San Diego, had a very cool campus, Google-esque, definitely. It was a really interesting client to work for, and one that I didn't have any experience with prior to that. I thought it was a great experience personally because they worked with a lot of Latham personnel who I had just spent the first, half of my summer with. In addition, a lot of former Latham employees, Latham associates, ended up at Viasat's in-house department, which I thought was really neat. And I think that just speaks to Latham's ability to maintain these excellent relationships with their clients, and how a lot of times when people leave the firm, they don't really leave the Latham community as a whole. They ultimately, a lot of times, end up becoming our clients. So I think there's something really to that. People don't leave here and then never want to see Latham again. Like, that was something that was really encouraging for me coming in as a 1L. So it was a great experience. I felt very fortunate too to have that experience that a lot of my other 1L classmates didn't have. And seeing what an in-house experience is like that early on in your career, I think is really valuable, because that is an exit opportunity for a lot of associates who don't want to stay in big law long term. So I was able to talk to a lot of these associates, many of whom were in big law early in their career, and kind of get a feel for what made them choose, going in-house, what made them leave big law, why they did. So definitely, if you have an experience like that, take advantage and just ask as many questions as possible. It's really valuable at that stage in your career.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to pass it on to Monica. Monica, can you talk to us a little bit about a particular DEI group or initiative at Latham that really made an impact on you, and also talk about your role as the local office leader of the Hispanic Latin American Lawyers Group?
Sure. So, I think that the Hispanic Latin American Lawyers Group has been a really, big part of my time at Latham. Like I said, I think coming from Miami, I was just really used to Hispanic and Latino diversity. And it was something that I really missed when I was at Vandy and then also at UVA. They're fairly diverse, but there are not a lot of Hispanic or Latino students, I think, generally in those populations. So it was something I really was kind of looking forward to. I also speak Spanish, and I do a lot of client work in Spanish, actually, which has been a unique part of my experience that I didn't expect initially. So as I said, I do white collar defense and government investigations work. A lot of that is like investigations and litigations against DOJ and SEC. And since I speak Spanish, a lot of that work has been based in Latin America or Spain, which has been a unique part of my experience as an associate. I just did not think I would be using Spanish in my regular day-to-day life. I also use my Spanish a lot in pro bono cases. I do a lot of immigration pro bono cases. So it's been a unique part of my experience for sure. But the Hispanic Latin American Lawyers Group has been definitely important for me. I run the local group. There's a group in every single firm around the world, pretty much, with I think the exception of like Singapore and a couple of the smaller offices, and we get to connect kind of globally, which is really great. We have like global virtual events, and then we also have, local office events. And it's just it's a nice way to connect with people who are either from similar backgrounds, similar communities, or are interested in those kinds of communities or do work in those communities. So it really is kind of like a nice piece of home. And it's been a really nice kind of part of my experience at Latham so far. I think that's also something that we do a lot of and that I care a lot about is progression and retention of like Hispanic and Latino people in the legal community. And that's something that we work on a lot, both in the DC office and just at Latham globally, and just to get more Hispanic and Latin kids in law school to begin with. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just to echo what Monica said, we have affinity groups for a lot of different ethnic and diversity groups. And so if you go on our website, you can see all the different affinity groups that we have. And I will say that a lot of firms have affinity groups, and it's just a really nice way to get to know other attorneys, to do some pro bono work that come through the different affinity groups. They have social events. At my previous two firms, we had affinity groups as well. And I would say that it's just a way to get involved, to take maybe on some leadership positions at a younger stage of your career, and also just to get to know people. So I would strongly encourage you to look at, as you're thinking about firms, look at what affinity groups they have and think about which ones would probably be a good fit for you. And so now I'm going to toss a question to both of you, which is, it's no secret that the legal profession is one of the least diverse professions, particularly at the more senior levels. Where do you see the opportunities to increase diversity in the legal profession? And I'm going to start with Melange.
Sure. So I think, Monica touched on this already about the notion of progression and retention. And I think that's something that affects all, minority groups. It affects women a lot as well. And so that's something that I think just early on in your career, it's really important to think about how, the firm can help support me as I move through the different stages of my career. So I think the legal industry as a whole needs to be more supportive of, working parents or people who are underrepresented at law firms. And there's a variety of ways to do that, but I think it does start with each firm individually, having the programs internally that make people feel welcome and make people feel like, they can do this job, do it really well, stay here as long as they want, but also achieve everything else in their life that they want to as well. And then, we've touched on this already, or we will touch on this in a little bit, I think, but the culture of belonging and the sense of belonging at a firm, I think, is also really important. And I think that stems largely from, a willingness of your peers and your coworkers and your superiors to always, be willing to learn, and not just, in the sense of what matters you're working on or what cases you're working on, but about people personally as well, because at the end of the day, this profession requires a lot of long hours, and you want to enjoy working with the people who are, right alongside you. And I think that willingness to learn really helps make that, experience just so much easier and more enjoyable for everyone all around.
Yeah, I'll echo what Milan said. I think when I was, a 1L or 2L, and I was like picking firms and where I was in a summer, I didn't think, okay, in 4 years from now or 5 years from now, what is my life going to look like? What are my priorities going to be? As a mid-level, what, do I want to stay at the firm and make partnered? What do I want to do? I was just kind of like, okay, where would I see myself having a good summer and then maybe working after law school? Like I think my priorities were different, but now I have an almost 2-year-old. And so I've done the whole like leaving a firm for maternity leave and coming back. And I have a lot of friends from law school around my same class year who have kids too, around the same age as my daughter. And so I've kind of gotten to watch them and how their firms have navigated returning from maternity leave. And honestly, I think I'm not surprised, because I love my supervisors, and I think I work with great people who have always been really understanding of work-life balance and have been really respectful of my time. But definitely like coming off of maternity leave during COVID, I came back from maternity leave in June of 2020. So there was like no childcare at that point, and it was just a circus trying to like watch a 6-month-old or whatever, a 5-month-old, and also like do this job, which is hard. And, so something I didn't know about before, I really didn't know about like what maternity leave benefits were like, or what, the hours requirement was and how flexible that was when I was, in law school. I wasn't on my radar. I wasn't married. I wasn't thinking about having kids. It just wasn't there, but it's something I would like consider looking into, and at least just like understanding every firm, right? Like I remember hearing like, oh, okay, every firm has a billable hour requirement. And I just was like, okay, yeah, that's every firm. I never actually asked more about it. Whereas like at Latham, you actually can be on like reduced hours. You can be on a reduced hour schedule, which a lot of other firms, have potentially, but you have to get it approved. And it's kind of like this big bureaucracy thing. At Latham, it's, if I'm like, hey, I'm really overwhelmed when I came off leave, I want to go down to like 80% of my hours. They were like, okay, cool. Let us know if tomorrow you want to go back up to 100%. They just were really understanding. And I felt like there's actually a lot of pathways to stay at the firm and be happy as a working parent who doesn't maybe want to fill the number of hours that are required, right? Like after your kids go to bed every single night. And that's something that I know now, and I'm able to kind of like live in that world and I'm able to succeed in that space. But I didn't think about that at all before when I was kind of looking at firms, but paying attention to like what firm policies are, and even asking people in the interview process, right? Like, so, how many associates are parents, if that's something that matters to you, or like, do you feel like associates have work-life balance? Like what's kind of the expectation? What's a day in your life? And I think people will be really honest with you for sure. I think those are all really good questions to ask. And, I think there's a lot that you'll learn kind of as you get in the interview process and as you have a summer, right? As you meet more and more people in firms, is just understanding what their experience is like, what their daily experience is like, and seeing if it's something that you can see yourself trying to do. And if you think that firm has kind of procedures in place to help you succeed and stay happy, which is hard in this job for sure.
Thank you, Monica. So one thing that I wanted to make sure that we touch on is how you find mentors and sponsors. I think one of the things that helps with retention is finding someone and people to support you in your career. And I know when I was in law school, I didn't know the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. So I'm going to just touch on that really quickly and then pass it off to you both. So sponsors are people who really propel your career forward. So the person who will make the phone call when it's time for you to go through progression up to partner, the person who will call if you decide you want to go in-house and they happen to have some opportunities to help you get there. A mentor is more the person that you go to when you have an issue that you want to discuss, or you need support in the day-to-day workings of your job. And I think it's really important to have both in your career. And they could be the same person, but they could be totally different people. And I think something I learned very early on is that they don't necessarily have to look exactly like you. That sometimes, it's okay that if your sponsor, like for me, it's okay if my sponsor is not an African-American female person. And in fact, my sponsor is a Caucasian female, and she has sponsored me since I was in law school. So passing it off to you, Monica, how do you find mentors and sponsors?
So at least for me, the way that I did at Latham, when I interviewed, and I met a few people in the interview process who I really loved. And one actually who's a female partner in DC, and she was managing partner at the time. Her name's Alice Fisher. She went to Vandy. She was actually in the same sorority as I was at Vandy. And we had like these kindred souls. And she is like incredible. She's like a total badass. And I wanted to be her. I was like, that's why I wanted to do white collar work. I just met her once and I was like, you're awesome. And kind of like meeting her in the interview process, and then as a summer, getting a chance to like meet her and work with her and then kind of keep working with her. I think she's definitely somebody who I value like any guidance that she gives me. So I think, and there's several other people that I met through the interview process who I then, remember their names. And I was like, I want to try to work with them when I'm a summer. And then in summertime, I met a lot of people. That's the whole point of the summer, is to meet people and to remember people that you think you connect well with. And if you want to work with them, or if you want to just get lunch with them or get coffee with them or just get to know them, I think those kinds of mentorship opportunities happen kind of organically, but you also want to kind of steer your own ship, right? Like if you really want to do a certain kind of, if you really want to do certain kind of work, or if you really want to go to DOJ in a couple of years, you know, like try to talk to somebody who's been to DOJ and back. If you really want to clerk, or if you really want to do a certain kind of practice, you know, try to make connections with those people. And I mean, at least in my experience, like as a summer and a junior, I mean, partners are just as accessible to you as when you're more senior. They love to talk to you and connect. Then there's also like, you know, formal mentorship programs. So there's like a formal mentor program where you get assigned a mentor. And I've always chosen to have that mentor generally be in a different group than me. So I've gotten to, you know, meet people at the firm through that who are, you know, IP litigators or corporate partners or people that I would not otherwise know that well. And it's been great to just understand who they are, and they give me guidance. And if I have questions on supervisors and things that like maybe I wouldn't want to talk to people who are in my same group about, they've been able to provide that guidance to me. I think also, I mean, just in my situation, I work a lot with a partner in DC who he's also Cuban from Miami. And we immediately, you know, he immediately took me under his wing and has been an incredible mentor to me. I think, you know, a lot of my mentors don't look anything like me, don't have any similar backgrounds, but then, you know, Danny and I have really connected because we have a shared experience, and we have, you know, for better or for worse, a shared personality that's very loud. We're like, our offices are right next to each other, and it's very loud because we're very loud people, but like that shared experience, he's been able to really give me a lot of guidance, and I just immediately trust him. And so I think there's always going to be, I think, hopefully other firms as well, a formal mentorship process that you should definitely be involved in. But then I think you really should, you know, when people offer, I know it's kind of scary if like a really, really senior partner offers to get lunch with you or offers to talk to you in like a casual way. It's kind of scary to call them up or email them and say, yes, I do want to take this call, or yes, I would love to talk with you, right? Some people, that's not your personality. It's harder to reach out and make those connections, but they're really offering them genuinely, and I would definitely always take them up.
Yeah, building off of what Monica said, I think especially at Latham, there are no shortages of formal mentorship opportunities. When you start, you get almost bombarded with, you know, a former mentor, you get, you know, an apprenticeship program where you shadow someone in a different practice group for the first couple months of your time at Latham just to see what that's like. You have a buddy who's just, you know, someone one grade above you or one class year above you who you can ping with all your stupid questions or whatever it may be. There's all these opportunities right off the bat. And then in addition to those, we talked about the committees earlier. The committees often have a lot of different, or the groups have a lot of different mentorship programs as well. So if you join a certain affinity group, you can opt to have a mentor in that affinity group, which is, I think, you know, another unique opportunity to connect with someone who may be more similarly aligned with you in terms of background, but maybe doesn't do the same kind of work you want to do. So it really is all about reaching out, making those opportunities. Those are the formal ways. I would say definitely echo what Monica said about, you know, trying to find those organic relationships too. I think, you know, I'm still fairly early on in my career, but you find that when you do work on a variety of different matters, you will gravitate towards certain people. Do you just like their work style better? You like, you know, the way they approach a case or the way they supervise or whatever it may be. And those are the people I usually tend to reach out to with other questions unrelated to the specific matter that we're working on, or, you know, hopefully, you know, once we're all back in person, those are the ones who you would want to go grab lunch with or grab a coffee with, or stop by their desk or their office to say hello. So that's a really easy way to build on those relationships that you already have there because you are, you know, working on a case with them already. I would definitely encourage you during your summer, you know, this sounds a little, you know, nitpicky, but I would write down the names of people that I work with, because you work with so many people as a summer. And as a summer, you only have a couple of weeks at the firm. It's really hard to keep track of everybody. And when, you know, it comes time for you to start full time again, you will be asked, are there certain people you want to work with? And I would be lying if I didn't say there were a couple of names that I blanked on. And I really enjoyed working with them. I had to go through the Facebook or the Latham website and be like, oh yes, this is that person. I love that case. We only worked for a couple of days together, but I loved working with her or him. So I would I would just, encourage you to keep mental notes or physical notes of people you worked with, what matters you worked on with them, what kind of work you like to do with them. That way, when you come back, it's really easy to pick up those relationships again where you left them off. As law students, I would also encourage you to reach out to people during the school year. Just because you guys aren't summer associates or 1Ls or whatever it may be, with Latham specifically, we still enjoy hearing from you. The summer class that we just had this past year, I've encouraged them, and have had a couple reach out to me and give me updates on what they're doing or ask for an update on the case that they worked on this summer. Those are really easy ways for you to kind of keep in the back of the mind of the people that you worked with. And then when you come back full time, they're like, oh yes, like this person a lot. We had a good relationship, would want to work with them again.
That's great advice. I definitely want to second the keeping a list of both the people that you've worked for and anyone that you want to meet over the summer, because as Melange said, the summer goes super quick, and like keeping a list of people that you're like, gosh, I want to make sure I have a coffee with this person, or I at least stop by their office and say hello and introduce myself, is an easy way just to make sure that you're building those connections before you even start as a full-time associate. So our last question is, we're going to talk a little bit about belonging. Clearly, it's really important at Latham because we have it in almost every title of a staff member we've got, so including my own title. But if you guys could each talk a little bit about what does it mean to create a culture of belonging? And we can start with Monica.
Sure. I mean, I think that something that really was important to me in the interview process was to go somewhere that, wasn't that self-serious, that where people, do this job, but, they're not like the kind of folks who are like, they put Esquire at the end of their name, or they're just, because like, I think for me in law school, there definitely were some folks at UVA who were like a little, I think every law school, there's people who they like puff up their chest a little bit about being a lawyer. And it's awesome. I mean, I'm very proud of being a lawyer. I think that's great. But I wanted to go somewhere where like, I felt like people were laid back and they liked the work they do, but they liked really being around each other more, versus some place that was kind of like what I would call a traditional stuffy thing, law firm life. Right. And I think in DC specifically, and I don't know how many of the folks in the room are interested in going to Washington, DC, but there's certainly like some firms that have like a little bit more of that DC kind of traditional stuffiness vibe. It's hard to explain what it is, but I think that like knowing that was important to me was helpful in the interview process. I wanted to go somewhere where people got along, because at the end of the day, if you're looking at big firms in DC, at least, I'll speak to DC, there was a lot of similarity. Especially if you want to do white collar work or litigation, a lot of the firms do similar work. There's similar practice groups. So it really comes to like, what's the culture like, right? Do you feel like a sense of being really connected to this place? Do you feel like people don't take themselves that seriously? That was really important to me. And I think that goes into the kind of culture of belonging. I think especially for Latham, at least in my experience, like it's been really hard for people to be remote. I think there's a lot of benefits, but I think it's a place where, people chose to come, they self-selected to come here because of the people for the most part, because they love working with the people. And obviously you still feel that when you're working remotely, it blends into everything that you do. Like I said, I had a lot of supervisors all my supervisors were really wonderful when I had no childcare. That kind of belonging, right? The fact that you feel like you can tell people like, hey, every day at 5 o'clock, I sign off because I pick up my daughter from daycare and I'm offline for a couple hours, like, and nobody's ever batted an eye at that. Like I've never had a problem with that. And I think part of that is the culture of, people feel like this is kind of like, it's kind of like a family. Like it's there's like a sense that like, if you ever leave Latham and you want to go back to a firm, like you definitely want to come back to Latham. Like, I think that's a common thing. And I think especially there's obviously laterals, people who get hired into Latham later on. And I hope that they feel the same kind of community and warmth, but I definitely as a summer, I feel like I feel very well connected. I feel very connected to the firm. I think the culture is really one that's, from the top down, like leadership down, and the way that the office managing partners make you feel, even like executive leadership make you feel, but really the supervisors, are your supervisors people who respect your time, who, they schedule group calls. Like, you know, our senior partners happy to join the calls with the first year associates, or this, you know, is there a sense of like everybody's on the same team and staying up late? You know, it's way easier to stay up late on that project if you know that like everybody's doing it together on your team. It's not just you breaking your back. So I think those are all parts of the job that I think if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would still be working at a law firm, any law firm, right? It has its moments where it's really hard work. I like the work, but I mostly like it because of the people that I get to work with.
Yeah, I think you put that really, really well. You know, as law students, I think the easiest way to see whether you're going into a firm that has a culture of belonging, that sense of belonging is, you know, when you are a summer, look at your summer class, because each of those people were hired with intention. And I know Latham specifically really tries to hire people not in a, you know, who are like-minded or have similar backgrounds, not similar in that way, but similar in the way they see the world, they approach their clients, they approach their work. And I found that every single person in my class when I was a summer was incredibly approachable. You know, I could talk to them about anything and we could relate on things, even if I had, you know, no personal experience with it. And that I've seen translate into all the other classes, you know, as I've come back as a full-time associate. The other thing is that, you know, this profession is still learning, like a lot of industries are. And that's not to say that you won't go through, you know, the first few years of your career without any incidents. Everyone faces uncomfortable situations, whether it's, you know, unrelated to the firm you're working at or related to the firm you're working at. And I think the biggest thing is that you want to be at a place where you can talk about it if something happens, or if it's just something that's going on in the world, that the people you work with are willing to have those conversations, give their opinions, give their feedback, and that you feel heard if you know, you want to talk about a certain issue or a certain experience that you've had in the past. That's something that I've found to be true at Latham, definitely from, you know, just the junior associate level and up to the partner level as well. And so it's all about, you know, finding that place where you feel like you can be heard and, you know, that the people will respect what you have to say. So these are all things I think that are really important to keep in mind as a summer, because they really, I don't think I necessarily focused on them specifically as a summer, and I wish I had, and luckily it's all been great coming back so far, but definitely would encourage you guys, and as you're interviewing, to keep an eye out for a lot of the things that Monica and I mentioned today, and seeing, because you will have that kind of gut feeling if you meet someone who you really can click with or really feel like you can talk to, and that'll translate into your work as well.
Thank you both so much. So that's the end of our formal program. I did want to make a plug. I know that most people are aware that there are diversity scholarships, 1L diversity scholarships. A lot of firms have them. You can find most of the information on the firm websites. I would say each firm has its own way that they define diversity. At Latham, we are very open about it. And it's really anyone who can show a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I would say apply to whatever firms you're interested in, because the other thing that, you know, the diversity scholarships are usually not that many of them per firm, but I will say that most firms keep really good track of who has applied, so that when you then, as a 2L, if you're interested in the same firm, they know that you've shown an interest since your 1L year. So go ahead and apply to whichever firms you're most interested in. I will say most firms launch on December 1st. It is not usually first come, first serve. So if you don't get to it till after finals, that's probably actually preferable. I would say focus on your finals, and right, you know, when finals are done, take a little break and then dive into the diversity scholarship applications. A lot of them are very similar. The personal statements are very similar. We're actually, Latham is putting on a personal statement workshop, so that if anyone has interest in thinking about how to formulate your personal statements, I'll make sure that Betsy has the information, and we'll be just talking about personal statements in general, not just the ones that are for Latham. I also want to make a quick plug. We have a Diversity Leadership Academy that is in April. It's going to be in person in San Francisco. We'll be flying people out there. We don't have a large number of diversity scholarships scholarships, but the Diversity Leadership Academy is another way to get involved. If you are interested in Latham, we have a lot more spots for the Diversity Leadership Academy than we do for the scholarships. You'll get to meet Latham associates, talk about DEI, get to know other 1Ls, and just really enjoy also being in San Francisco. So both of those opportunities are available on our website. Betsy, did I miss anything before we jump into Q&A?
No, I think that was fabulous. I think so. Does anybody have any questions? No? Well, you are welcome to reach out to Nicole Yorens. Nicole, we can provide her email to y'all, which we will as a follow-up to this. And a recording of this program will also be available in Simplicity's document library. But if any questions have jarred loose in the last seconds, no.
I'll just say really fast, if anybody is interested in DC or Latham or just wants to talk, I'm happy to connect with anybody. Like if anybody's trying to get out to DC, I'm happy to give you guys my thoughts and like talk about Latham, other firms, just like anything. Really, I'm more than happy to chat. Definitely like reach out.
I'll say the same thing for New York as well, if anyone wants to, to come all the way up here. Also would plug the Diversity Leadership Academy. It's a really, really cool experience. And you get to meet law students and associates from all over the country. And we've had some incredible speakers over the last couple of years. So very excited it's in person for you guys this year. Definitely apply if you can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. Please give a round of applause. Nicole, Monica, Melange, we really, really appreciate your insights today and your help and offer to help in the future. Thank you for your interest in Vanderbilt students.
Thank you so much, Betsy. And thank you everyone for joining us. Okay, have a good day.